So what happened that created this state? We already saw the differences. What happened that created this state of difference in the U.S.? Well, of course, European migration. We talked about this a little bit already. Whereas you immigrate from Germany, you immigrate from England, you immigrate from Ireland or France or so forth, and you bring your church state with you. And when you get here, you don't want to. Remember, back in the colonies and even up till about 150 years ago, you only wanted to hang out with your religion. You might have to work with that Catholic. You might have to work with that Methodist. And at work you can be civil. But you really had close friends amongst your religious group. It's only a modern feature that we can really get along with everybody. The first and the second Great Awakening. These are going to have huge ramifications on Western Christianity and U.S. Christianity. The First Great Awakening, 1725 to 1775, our major players would be Whitefield, Wesley, and Edwards. Wesley would be John Wesley, Methodism, or Wesleyanism. Let's not immediately link him to Methodism. John Edwards. So interestingly there, do you see that? You have John Wesley, Arminian, and you have Jonathan Edwards, Calvinist. And yet they're still both part of this, what we call the First Great Awakening. Here's where we're going to get revivals going on, primarily up in the Northeast. New York, New England, those kind of places are really what we're talking about at this moment. There are going to be outbursts of emotions in these tent meetings. They're kind of the precursors to what we're going to see in Pentecostalism when we get down the road. But there's no causal connection between these two groups, or between this event and the rise of Pentecostalism. You are going to start to get denominational splits here in the First Great Awakening. Primarily in the Presbyterian Church, you're going to have the Old Light and the New Light. And there's not really too much theological difference. There's how do you preach? Do you preach like a good Presbyterian, standing in the pulpit, using your Presbyterian voice and so forth? Or do you preach dramatically, dynamically, and things of that nature? Good thing we don't have that today in America, where we decide we'll go to that church because we like that preacher. We won't go to that church because we don't like that preacher. Oh, yes. Yes, that was sarcasm. I'm sorry. I'm sometimes subtle with my sarcasm.
Wasn't very heavy.
Emotionalism is huge here. You'll see why emotionalism is huge here. Circuit riding. This is where you don't stay in Montrose. You make the circuit to that parish, that parish, that parish. Dramatic sermons, especially, this is where Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. You know, that kind of almost turn or burn, the precursors to turn or burn kind of mentality coming out of this time period. Optimism. Huge optimism in the time period that we're talking about. We've come to the new world. We've established ourselves in the new world. We are building a society that is headed towards utopia. And once we've Christianized everybody, that's going to give God the signal to send the second coming. That's called postmillennialism. I realize somebody who actually believes that may correct me on certain points there. Then we get to the Second Great Awakening. It is more 19th century. It's kind of hard to pinpoint, here's where the Second Great Awakening starts, here's where the Second Great Awakening ends. It's a much looser kind of concept. It knows no territorial boundaries. It happens in the north, it happens in the south. It happens on the frontier, it happens everywhere. It's less Calvinistic, although we have Congregationalists, we have Presbyterians, we have Methodists, and we have Baptists all over this. And just because you have a tent revival over here in the East during the Second Great Awakening, and you guys have a tent revival over here in the frontier during the Second Great Awakening, it doesn't mean you two were on the same team, you coordinated it, or anything like that. This is just the way you do things in the 19th century at this time period. This is going to set the stage for the Restoration movement with camp meetings and evangelistic preaching and the Cambridge Revival. Cambridge Revival is one of those moments I would love to be there, because at some of these tent meetings we had very strange events happening. The beginnings of what will become Slain in the Spirit, but again, that's more Pentecostal and we have to put that on hold. But we have these instances of silence. The congregation just sits in silence. We also have holy barking, whatever that is. We have tiptoe dancing. I don't exactly know how you tiptoe dance, but that goes on at some of these revivals. And that's where we start to get the Restoration movement people, Stone, Campbell, some of those other names that you would recognize. And they're standing there going, well, we like your enthusiasm, but we don't like your outbursts. This is going to be the start of abolitionism and some missionary programs and things of that nature.